Scott, what do you think overall of the election returns?
Well, I think there's a couple things that come out of it. First and foremost, pundits don't know what they're talking about. Apparently, if this is supposed to be the red wave, and
Right.
it's been anything but. I have to say, if I were a online pundit or on air pundit, I'd probably be on the short side of history as well. I thought that all conditions pointed to a Republican victory, or a sweep of the red tide. And it was based on a couple things. One, the age-old notion that it's the economy, stupid, and the overwhelming data points to the fact that the majority of Americans view the economy as the number one issue. And two, I, not that I'm a supporter of Trump, but I actually was assessing that Trump retained a sufficient power base that he would be able to tilt a number of elections into the Republican favor, that he was still a voice that people listened to in sufficient numbers. I apparently was wrong on both counts. There had been many in the Democratic Party that said that abortion was going to be one of the fundamental issues of this election. It turned out that it was. That the recent Supreme Court ruling, which overturned Roe v. Wade, has resonated in an amazing fashion with a significant percentage of the American electorate. So much so that they were willing to turn a blind eye, so to speak, to the sad state of affairs of the U.S. economy, and instead vote on this issue, which for them was one of principled morality. I know there's a lot of people who disagree with that. I'm not sitting here I'm not weighing in on the issue. I'm just stating that there was a significant number of people in the United States who put the abortion issue above the economy and allowed that to guide their vote. And there was also a sufficient number of Republicans who were turned off by the involvement of former President Trump in the election, that they are concerned about his continued stance, undermining the faith in the American electoral system. He calls the 2020 election results fraudulent, even though no legally convincing case has been made in any court in the United States. There's people like myself who continue to believe that there are significant problems with the way America conducts elections. First and foremost, let's just look at the following statement of fact. Anywhere else in the world, this election would be done. Anywhere else in the world, this election would be done. The results would be in, and boom, you have a winner. We're supposed to be the premier democracy in the world. We are the pace setter. We set the standard, and we can't tell you days after the election is finished who won a result. There's a problem, America, because one, this is inefficient. This is stupid. This is wrong. And you have to ask yourself, why do we continue to buy into a system that can't produce results? If this was a foreign country and we were the observers, we'd be criticizing them, saying they are undermining the very democracy they pretend to be implementing. Well, America, point the finger at yourself. The fact that we can't call an election this far in undermines confidence in the process, not because there's evidence of fraudulent activity. We don't know, but it creates the perception that there could be fraudulent activity. What's going on? Why does it take so long? Why isn't this fully transparent? I mean, it just goes on and on and on. It undermines faith in the system. And that's one of the things out here. I personally believe that the election results reflect the will of the people, for the most part. I am not sitting here saying, oh, this was a stolen election. I'm not doing that. I have confidence in the election results. But others don't, because we live at a time where, questioning the viability or the reliability of elections is a bipartisan thing. I know everybody's going to 2020 Trump, 2020 Trump, 2020 Trump. Okay, what if I give you 2016 Clinton? She did the same thing. She said the election was stolen. She said it was illegitimate. Many of the Democrats who were pursuing Trump and condemning him for not acknowledging Biden's victory in 2020 were on record doing the exact same thing for Trump's election in 2016. The hypocrisy is unreal. Which again, when we look at documents like the National Security Strategy of the United States, which says this is America, this is how we're going to deal with the world, one of the foundational arguments made by the Biden administration is that American democracy is the most important thing in the world today. That American democracy is what should be sold to the world. That's what gives us legitimacy. That's what gives us strength. That's what makes us the indisputable, exceptional power. We are the indispensable nation because of the strength of American democracy. Hey, guess what? American democracy is fundamentally broken. So what does that say about America's relationship with the world? But it's not just that we have two political parties that are not only engaged in open political civil war, because this ain't the way governments are supposed to work. Democracy is about competing ideas. Let's say, Cynthia, you and I are running for the same position. Your platform, I have my platform. And we're supposed to go out and debate this with the American people, with our constituents. And then based upon the strength of our argument and the soundness of our facts, an informed electorate goes, I think Cynthia Pooler is better on this than Scott Ritter. I'm going to vote for Cynthia Pooler. What I do is say, wow, congratulations, Cynthia. You ran a great campaign. I still disagree with you, but I'm going to have to do a better job next time. Get my arguments to people so that I can win more votes than you. That's the way it's supposed to work. But the way it works now is I have to say, don't listen to Cynthia. She's a disinformation. Everything she says is a lie. Not only that, she's supported by foreign powers. The Russians are helping her. The Iranians are helping her. Bad people are helping her. Cynthia is a bad person. A foreign agent. Cynthia is this, that, and the other thing. Anything but talking about what Cynthia's actually saying. And that's the problem with America. We've turned into this horrible society where debate, dialogue, and discussion is no longer tolerated. Instead, we attack people. And in doing so, we not only create a divide between Democrats and Republicans, we make it impossible for well-meaning third parties to emerge. And in New York, we have the case of Diane Sayre. Diane Sayre was a sane, rational, fact-based candidate for Chuck Schumer's seat in the United States Senate. And Diane Sayre never had a chance to emerge. They set the bar high. They said she had to get 45,000 signatures. She got 66,000 signatures. Got her name on the ballot, but they denied her access to a debate because they said 15% of the New Yorkers didn't express their support for her. Well, the polls that they used to establish this lack of support didn't have her name on them. So how can you ascertain anything if you say there's only two candidates, which one do you support? Third candidate, who got 66,000 signatures, by the way, didn't get on that poll. And now they say, well, you can't participate in the debate because the poll shows you didn't get 15% of support by the people. What the hell's wrong with this system? And to make matters even worse, Chuck Schumer funds money sent to Ukraine that's used to fund a Center for Countering Disinformation, which puts Diane Sayre on the list because she dares challenge the public or the official narrative about Ukraine. And she is now targeted as an information terrorist. She is targeted as a war criminal. And then they put her on another list funded by the United States taxpayer, encouraged by Chuck Schumer, which marks her for death. So Chuck Schumer running against Diane Sayre not only works to keep her off the debate stage, keep her off the ballot, but to actually kill her. Chuck Schumer was involved in a process to put Diane Sayre on a Ukrainian hit list that actually kills the people on the list. Is this the state of American democracy today? Is this what we want as a people? Is this what we're proud of? Is this the message we want to send to the world when we say American democracy is the shining city on the hill? I'm telling you right now, any foreigner looking at this has to say, hell no, I don't want to live in that ghetto. I'm going back to where I come from. Stay away from me. Good job, America.
Well, the old adage that timing is everything. I think the Supreme Court, with its majority of conservatives, timed it wrong because it was right before the midterm elections. If they had done this any other time, I don't think there would have been as many Republican losses as there was. I think the whole crux of the matter was pro-choice.
No,
And women were furious.
I agree with you 100%, except the following. The Supreme Court is supposed to be apolitical, and therefore the timing of a decision should not be linked to American politics. Now, having said that, I know that the Supreme Court oftentimes avoids a decision because of its inherent political nature. And maybe in their rush to overturn Roe v. Wade, because there can be no doubt that that was the political motivation of this court. This wasn't about justice. I know I'm going to get in trouble. People are like, Scott, you're wrong on this. Look, this was a decision passed by a Supreme Court that was handpicked to achieve just this outcome. You can't pretend otherwise. And they did what they were put in position to do. The timing was bad. And maybe that is an argument in favor of the legitimacy of the Supreme Court decision, because you can say, look, these were conservative justices who passed a decision knowing that the decision would be disruptive. But I'm here to tell you right now, nobody predicted what the outrage that took place after Roe v. Wade. Nobody thought that this outrage would resonate in Kansas, the heart of American conservatism. And yet this decision motivated women who were normally leaning conservative, leaning Republic, become so outraged by this decision that they flipped. They went over to the other side. This is something that the Republicans couldn't see. And then what they did is they refused to address it responsibly and instead ignored it, saying, well, the economy is going to override all this. The people ultimately will vote their pocketbooks. And that wasn't the case. And I think it hurt the Republicans. We don't know what the final outcome of the Senate is. I think it's going to come down to Georgia in a runoff between Warnock. But I think we're comfortable in saying that Kevin McCarthy is going to be the next Speaker of the House, but not by the margin that everybody was hoping. They were hoping that he would be backed by this powerful Republican-dominated Congress. But I think it's going to be much closer than the Republicans had hoped for. But on the big issues, again, it doesn't matter, Cynthia, because at the end of the day, whether it's a Democratic Congress or Republican Congress, they're incapable of passing sound legislation. The Democrats either pass something that is totally partisan in favor of them, or the Republicans pass something that's totally partisan. They're incapable of coming together, negotiating the kind of old school compromises that put the benefit of the American people ahead of party politics. This Congress is fundamentally broke, so it doesn't matter whether Nancy Pelosi's holding the gavel or Kevin McCarthy's holding the gavel. At the end of the day, they're going to be gaveling garbage.
So what do you think will be the outcome of this election in reference to the war in Ukraine? This is more or less giving Biden a blank check to continue the policies that he has. What do you think the future holds?
Well, let's keep in mind that when Rand Paul stood up and demanded an inspector general be appointed to oversee this new Lend-Lease, the $43 billion package that was passed in May, the one, by the way, that funded the people that put Diane Sayre, me, and others on this hit list. Hey, thanks, Congress. But the Republican Party didn't rally around him. The Republican Party allowed this stuff to go in without an inspector general. The Republican Party is as deeply infected with Russophobia as the Democrats are. Russia is the easy target. We kick them, we beat them, we yell at them, we condemn them, we blame them for everything, and the Republicans are as guilty of that as the Democrats. Any opposition that the Republican Party might put to Joe Biden's Ukraine defense policy will be purely political in nature, meaning that they're there to score political points, not to do the right thing. If they were doing the right thing, they'd oppose this war. They'd say no money for this illegal war, money for the American people. But they're not going to oppose the war. Not a single one of these Republicans. I mean, there's a couple that have said no to this war, but the majority of Republicans are saying, no, we fully support this Ukraine thing. Down with Russia. Putin is evil. Putin is bad. We need to win this conflict. We need to fight them over there before we fight them over here. All this kind of nonsense. And the fact that Kevin McCarthy's holding the gavel isn't going to change that. There might be more questions asked about Biden's policy. I think that's why we have on-site inspectors in Ukraine right now trying to track down the disposition of the weapons that we sent. They're not doing it because they have a moral obligation to prevent terrorists in Europe from gaining access to Javelin anti-armored missiles or Stinger anti-air missiles. No, if we cared about that, we would have solved this problem up front. What they're trying to do is gather data that allows them to go before Congress and answer questions to deflect congressional angst and ire away from Biden and allow this material support for Ukraine to go. Will Biden get the 60 billion that he wants? Maybe not. He'll get 40 billion. He'll get a lot. It's a lot of U.S. taxpayer money going to waste in Ukraine. And at the end of the day, we don't have a Congress that's going to be demanding a diplomatic, off ramp that's going to be insisting on the resuscitation of arms control. On improving U.S.-Russian relations. That Congress doesn't exist, and frankly speaking, I don't think that Congress will ever exist, not at least in the foreseeable future.
I see you a lot on different YouTube venues.
I apologize.
No, it's okay. And you talk about the war in Ukraine. Diane did. You and I have had many discussions. But in the final analysis, women will say, we want our reproductive rights. Even if we are 1 second away from doomsday, that is utmost important to people, And I think that the issue of nuclear annihilation is too scary and people are not concentrating on it, but they will concentrate on the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Well, there's that saying that all politics is local, and
Right.
There's nothing more local than, look, regardless of where I stand on the issue, which is frankly nobody's business, and I don't think anybody cares. This is a very personal issue for women, very personal issue for women. And there's nothing more local than a personal issue. So, this is an issue that can't be ignored, but you know what else is a personal issue? Dying in a nuclear holocaust.
Right.
Back in the 1980s, I think people understood the reality of it. I don't think people today understand how close they are to actually dying in a nuclear war. It's an abstract thing right now. When you grew up ducking and covering, when you went to school and the alarm went off and you went under the table and you did this, if you grew up as I did next door to a nuclear weapons facility that was going to be nuked on day one of any war, and when every time my dad disappeared into the bunker because of a crisis with the Soviet Union, and he'd pick up the phone and call my mom and give the code word Alas Babylon, which is derived from a book in the 1960s, where that was code word used by Air Force officers warning their family that the nukes are coming in, prepare for doomsday. It was real. Alas Babylon. My mom's like, do we have enough water in the basement? Do we have food? Get everybody, make sure all the kids are home, not because it's coming, baby. This is the potential for a nuclear war. It wasn't abstract. It wasn't theoretical. It was daily reality.
Mm-hmm.
That's why getting rid of these weapons was such a fundamentally important thing. That's why I am such a staunch advocate for the work that I and others did and implementing the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty to get rid of these weapons so that the population in Europe didn't have to go to bed every night going, holy cow, are we going to get nuked tonight? It was real. I lived it. I was there. I know. And we saved generations of Europeans from that worry. And in doing so, we created the process that saved Americans from that worry. And yet Americans have forgotten what it's like to be scared about nuclear war. Right now, we have idiots in the White House who say, hey, maybe we can win a nuclear war. Because why else would you put forward a national security policy that has included a nuclear posture that says we can use nuclear weapons preemptively in a non-nuclear environment under conditions that we alone get to say? It means we're holding the world hostage to our nuclear weapons. We're saying, don't irritate us, don't anger us, don't threaten us, or else we may nuke you, and we're mad enough to do it. We're crazy enough to do it. And we believe we can win. We believe we can escalate, escalate to de-escalate. We believe we can control, contain any escalation of nuclear. That's why we build low-yield nuclear warheads that can be used preemptively. And we say, boom, there's the little one. Don't do anything because we got the big one here. We can manage this. Guys, you can't manage nuclear warfare. The genie don't come out of the bottle a little bit. The genie comes out of the bottle. The genie is out of the bottle. And the nuclear genie is either all or nothing. There's no little bit. And we forgot about it. Americans are sitting here talking about abortion rights, as they have a right to do. They're talking about high cost of living. Yes, that's right. But both of those things don't mean the termination of all life in the world. You know what does? Nuclear war, nuclear weapons. Diane Sayre was out there trying to talk about this, and she was silenced by the establishment. I'm trying to talk about it, and I'm being silenced by the establishment. Hey.
It totally amazes me that there's so many people in the media making tons of money who are spewing all these lies and disinformation. It absolutely boggles my mind. Do you think it's ever been this bad before?
Well, I can tell you that, I can only speak to my personal experience. It was pretty bad in 2002, 2003 about Iraqi WMD. Okay,
Right.
That was tough. It was another tough time in 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9 about Iran's nuclear program to try and argue against the popular narrative that Iran was pursuing a nuclear weapons program. Got me subjected to widespread condemnation, efforts to silence me, etc. So, it's been bad, but it's bad now. Whether it's worse or more, it's just bad. What I'll say is this: it's bad today in an environment where American politics is fundamentally broke. Back in 2003, as bad as the disinformation campaign was, we at least had congressmen and senators who pretended to work with each other. It wasn't this black versus white, good versus evil. Everybody's you either with us or against us politically. The political situation here in the United States today is the worst I've ever seen it. I've never seen it this bad. And I lived through the Reagan years, where Ronnie Reagan was evil incarnate in the Democratic mind, but the Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, was able to sit down with his Republican counterparts and make things happen. We can't do that today. Nobody's sitting down with anybody. Everybody hates everybody. It's a virtual civil war. So in that environment, it used to be people could just say, I disagree with you, Scott. But now it's not that I disagree with you, Scott. It's, Scott, you're a liar. Scott, you're a Russian agent. Scott, you're a horrible human being. Scott, you were convicted, Scott. You were convicted, Scott. You don't have a right to speak on anything, Scott. You were convicted. Look how bad it is. I was supposed to speak. I'm going to say this. I won't give the name, okay, but I was supposed to speak in Northampton on November 18th. I was scheduled to speak, was sponsored by Massachusetts Peace Group. And they said, man, the demand for this is so high, we have to get a new venue. That means a lot of people wanted to hear me speak. And yet they sent me an email earlier this week. We have to cancel, Scott, because you were convicted. You're a convicted sex offender, and we can't have you. I'm like, wow. Why in God's name did you invite me to begin with? Do you not do due diligence? Do you not know my history? And if you think there's a problem, why don't you call me and talk about it? But instead, I guess the guy figured out Wikipedia for the first time in his life, Like, Wikipedia, oh my God, look what it says on Wikipedia. We're canceling. And that's the environment we live in. We live in a cancel culture where, here it's clear people wanted to hear my discussion about Ukraine and Russia. They wanted to hear it. The overwhelming numbers, they had to find a new venue. But no, cancel them, not because of what I'm saying about that issue, but about a manufactured case that led to a miscarriage of justice that they don't even have the courage to ask me about personally. That's the environment we live in right now, the politics of personal destruction.
You talk about the civil war between the Democrats and Republicans, but on the issue of funding Ukraine, they're all in agreement with each other,
Yeah,
right?
no, I mean, there's some issues that they go, look, the easy ones. I mean, when I say the easy ones, it was like Saddam Hussein. I mean, weapons of mass destruction. There weren't any. We got rid of them. You have a chief inspector who's telling you there are no weapons of mass destruction, but that didn't matter because the American public had been predisposed into believing anything negative about Saddam Hussein because he had been, they had been brainwashed for years. Saddam is evil, Saddam is evil, Saddam is evil, Saddam is evil. And when Scott Ritter comes out and says there are no WMD, they just go, Saddam is evil, Saddam is evil, Saddam is evil. It doesn't matter what the truth is. We're going to go to war with Russia. It doesn't matter what you say, Maidan, you don't, Minsk, the expansion of NATO, the shelling of Ukrainian, of Russian children. That doesn't matter. Putin is evil, Putin is evil, Putin is evil, Putin is evil, Putin is evil. That's what they've been programmed to think. And it doesn't matter when somebody comes out and says, hey, let's talk about this on a fact-based basis. Let's have a discussion. Putin is evil, Putin is evil, Putin is evil, Putin is evil. Therefore, we must confront Putin. We must confront. We're a bunch of robots. Literally, we're mind-dead robots who've been programmed with one response. Putin is evil. Therefore, we must support anything that is put forward as confronting the evil that is Putin. That's America today. Hey, good job, America.
Oh,
Proud of
wow.
you idiots.
So the next 2 years are really going to be interesting. I don't think Trump is going to bow out gracefully. I
No,
think he's going to remain in the spotlight, but I blame the media for that because they like him because it increases their ratings.
I
So
heard
even though they say they hate him, they really like him because it makes their ratings higher.
I heard something fascinating watching these talk shows about the election. First of all, one big winner in this election was Ron DeSantis in Florida.
Uh-huh.
Huge victory that under any other circumstance would propel him to the national stage. I mean, if the Republicans are looking for a conservative politician that could, I think, wipe the floor with Joe Biden or Kamala Harris in 2024, or anybody the Democrats put up, it's Ron DeSantis. But what's going to happen now? Trump is going to announce, and Trump is already attacking DeSantis. Now, what should happen under any circumstances, the media should tune out Trump and raise the volume on DeSantis. But what the Democratic controlled media is saying, we're going to give Trump a platform because Trump will always control 30% of the Republican faithful. And what they're going to say is we need more Republicans in the race. We don't want a DeSantis versus Trump because DeSantis could end up winning 70-30. What they need to do is water down DeSantis, get more Republicans out there so that Trump always has his 30%, and that 30% will defeat the numbers that are going to be generated by the others. What happened in 2015, 2016, they want to do it again today. The fact of the matter is Ron DeSantis, and I have to be honest, I'm not a DeSantis fan. I'm not here trying to argue in favor of his candidacy. I think there's a lot of problems with him, but reality is reality. He won a decisive victory in Florida, and he resonates on the national stage. He should be the natural Republican nominee to defeat Joe Biden, but Trump's going to challenge him, and the Democratic-controlled media is going to use that to undermine the Republican chances for the White House in 2024.
And the election of or the nomination for a Democrat is going to be pretty interesting. And I think the next 2 years, there's going to be a lot to talk about, and to debunk all the crap we hear on TV.
Hey, look, it's job security, Cynthia. We have a lot to talk about for the next 2 years.
Good,
Imagine
good,
if
good.
everything was solved, we'd have nothing to talk about. Nobody would tune in.
Right.
Stuff easy.
So let's talk about, first of all, let's talk about your new website.
Well, it's ScottRitterExtra.com. And it's a website that was put together in a spinoff of a podcast I was doing called Ask the Inspector, which basically allowed people to call in with questions and I would answer the questions, et cetera. And it's a one-stop shop, meaning that when I do a podcast, for instance, when you send me a link here, it'll go on that website. So anybody who wants to have anything that I've written or anything that I've been on, they can go there, they can get it. There's no paywall, everything's free. But the one thing about the ScottRitterExtra.com is that it's linked to Substack, so that if anybody was inclined to support, they can do so, but it's not a prerequisite for engaging with the with content. But that's it. It's a one-stop shop. That's where you go if you want to support me, or if you want to gain access to any of the stuff that I do, or if you want to put comments down that condemn me. It's democracy, baby. I'm not afraid of it. If you don't like me, go on Substack, go on Scott Ritter extra.com and find something you don't like and put all the hate-filled vitriol that you want in there. I'll read it. I'll laugh at it. But if you want to put things that are nice to me, do it. And if you want to provide support, please do it.
And how's your book coming along?
It's doing very well, thank you. I just got another venue in New York City at the Russian Samovar. It's a famous restaurant on January 15th. So hopefully we'll be able to fill that up. Again, on ScottRitterExtra.com, I have a flyer that advertises that. And I have a speaking event coming up in Boston on November 18th. You can find that on the website too. I'm speaking in Ann Arbor, Michigan on 3 nights, December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So, it's doing well. And hopefully I'll be doing a local event here in Bethlehem sometime in December. Joe Lombardo is helping arrange that at the Bethlehem Library. And then I should be doing something in Troy in January, but the date hasn't been figured out. So things are going okay.
You're doing the bookstore in Troy?
I don't know. I don't know the venue. I don't think so. I don't think it's the bookstore. I think it's going to be a peace action group, and they'll have. I don't know what their venue is.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, so tell us in 30 seconds or less what the gist of your book is.
Just the book is a history of the implementation of the INF Treaty, the treaty that helped end the Cold War, brought about meaningful nuclear disarmament for the first time. But more importantly, is given the current context, it's a template on how the United States and Russia could work together in the future. People keep saying, how do we get out of this? What's a diplomatic off-ramp? And I'm saying, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We already did it. Read my book and you'll see exactly how we were able to do this back then. And there's no reason why we couldn't replicate that same outcome today.
Right.